Can you? Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the February 11th meeting of the Grosse Ile Township Public Services Commission. Call the meeting to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we'll call roll. Phil Kennedy is excused this evening. He won't be here. Les Schmidtke.
Present, sir.
John Reilly's expected, but he'll be a little late. Lenny Pusdesris.
Present.
Brenda Cloutier.
Here.
Jim Budny.
I am here.
Ted Van Oz.
Here.
And Bill Costick. We have a quorum. Next, we'll entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
There's support. Okay. Been moved and supported that this evening's agenda be approved as distributed. Are there any additions, deletions? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next, we have item number 6 on our agenda is approval of the vouchers that relate to our water and sewer systems.
Mr. Chairman, do you want to approve the minutes first?
Oh, I thought, yes, I do. Item number 5 is approval of our minutes of our December 10th meeting.
I have motion to approve.
Okay, is there support? Second. Move and support of the minutes of the December 10th meeting be approved as distributed. Are there any comments, corrections, deletions? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Now we have review of our vouchers, which are found on our agenda, and this relates to our water and sewer system. Are there any comments or questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Support? I'll support it. I'll support it. And,
I have one question.
okay,
Since we didn't have a meeting in January, and this is the stuff from January, what about the stuff from December? Don't we usually get that in our packet too?
I'll take this opportunity to go through a couple of different things. Regarding your point, I had inquired with the finance director on that. I think the comment she had mentioned to me was this incorporates, as far as the revenues and expenditures, all of the revenues and expenditures for that period of time. Where it matters, to your point, I think, is the vouchers, the ones that we incurred during the time period of December. We'll get that for you. But all I received from her were the ones from January, and that was the explanation I had received. So
that's a good catch, Les. Okay? So we'll get those in our next packet.
yeah, but the expenditures and revenues, those are all up to date as
Sure.
of when this which incorporated the time period from our December meeting and January meeting. I also wanted to mention there were a couple of typos in the packet that John brought to my attention. That's what was left for you today. Action items B and C, those are two separate cover pages. A second page was left off the memo regarding the seasonal water shutoffs. That's been condensed to one page, so the replacement has been received by you this evening for that memo. And then since the publication of the packet, there have been a variety of budget meetings which have resulted in some slight changes to the budget. So the new revised budget packet has been provided for you this evening. So when we go through it, we'll work off that one
Okay.
rather than the one that you received on Friday.
The one that was handed out loose.
Yes.
Okay, so back to our motion. We have a motion and support to approve the vouchers. Is there any further comments on that? If not,
Well, then I think that we need to revise the approval. If we only have January, then we only approve January. We don't approve December without seeing it. We'll approve that when we get it.
That's an appropriate amendment, sure.
sure. Well, that's the one we're looking at, actually.
Right, it'll be January.
Well, but
so
the
it's gonna
approval
be
is
1/1/20 to
Right.
2/1/20 rather than the 12/1.
Oh, I see. I see on the agenda the way it's
Yeah.
written. Okay. All right, with those clarifications, are there any other comments? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carried. Now, you already mentioned the statement of revenues and expenditures, which is just a budget summary of where we stand in the fiscal year which through January, we only have 2 more months left in the fiscal year. And we always just look at those, and if there aren't any questions, we receive and file them.
And where the vouchers are by month, this is year-to-date, so this
Yes.
incorporates a time period that we didn't cover in not having a December meeting, so.
Are there any comments on the statement of revenues and expenditures? If not, we'll file it. Item 8 is approval of the treasurer's report for December and January.
This will be one that'll have to be modified to show just January rather than December.
I don't have any questions. Can I have a motion to approve the treasurer's?
Motion to approve the treasurer's report for January.
I'll second it.
All right. Any questions? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Next, we have an opportunity for public comment. We have 3 gentlemen in the audience, and you're all welcome to come up and speak if you wish. All right, and we are going to go through our agenda this evening, and the way we run this meeting is we allow people to talk if you have a question, but we'll go through you can take notes, and if after we go through our budget discussion tonight, if you have a question, I would welcome that at the end of that discussion. Okay. So action items, Derek, I'm going to turn it over to you to make the budget presentation.
Before you this evening is a recommendation of approval for a proposed budget for our fiscal year 2020 through 2021. I have included all of the different budgets that our department oversees. My understanding is that community development isn't normally reviewed by this commission. If there's a desire to review that budget at the meeting tonight, we can go through that. But if it's not something you've traditionally done, we'll start with drainage. I have put together a summary sheet which kind of highlights all the differences between last year's budget and this year's budget. That includes different programs, different purchases, substantial cost differentials between various accounts. So what I would like to do is to work off that budget summary, and then we can go into detail on the various budget pages that were included and are attached to that memo. So if we're not going to be discussing community development, I would like to start with the drainage account.
Okay.
So for fiscal year 20 through 21, we do have a substantial amount of projects that we're proposing for expenditure within the storm and drainage account. For the benefit of the residents, the tax revenue we receive for this account is about $210,000 a year. We also have a fund balance that exists for that account that sits right around $800,000 at this point. For the fiscal year, for the upcoming fiscal year, I have allocated expenditures for the 2 various drainage projects that we've talked about at length, and that is Swan Island and Parke Lane, in the amounts that the engineers have estimated those projects to account for. Engineering has also been included within those line items, so we're anticipating in the budget the full expense of both of those projects at $130,000 and $350,000, respectively, for Swan Island and Parke Lane. We also have, which is a new line item for this year, $30,000 in an allocation for ditching. We have noticed quite a significant issue with the county's ability and timeliness in doing ditching work throughout the township, which has resulted in drainage issues pretty much township-wide. The idea is to allocate some of these funds to institute a ditching program, and we would just do that work up until the limits of what we have available in the budget, and that's that $30,000 number. The township would partner in that work, and that we would provide transportation of the spoils off-site or away from the work location, contract with a private entity to do the grade all work, and then there would be a hydroseeding component to that project where we would come in after the fact and spray the banks in order to ensure that vegetation is reestablished when that project is complete in those areas that we do the work. This wouldn't be for new ditches. This would basically be cutting out the existing ones to the bottom of the pipe so that they work as originally designed. And the allocation has been made to do that for the next fiscal year. So that's going to be a new project that we're proposing, or that is a new project that we're proposing, and will come out of the drainage account.
And that's $30,000.
That's correct.
So I just want to comment on that, in case anybody's watching, and for the sake of anybody here. You know, the county owns all the roads. They're responsible for all the roadside ditches and any other ditches. It's generally, most counties have a drain commissioner. With our new form of government here with the county executive, they have a public services department that's responsible for ditching. These ditches that we're talking about, as explained to me, where we've requested the county to come out and do some ditch digging and reshouldering of the ditches and so forth, is where they just say, these projects are too small for us to come out to Gross Hill. You've made requests, so that's why they're doing this. Just because people have asked for their ditches to be cleaned, the county won't come out and do them, because we don't have a major problem, and this is trying to address citizen complaints, correct?
And that's how we would prioritize locations, areas where we have drainage problems, areas where we have resident complaints. This money is not going to be able to do the whole township, so I don't want the residents to get
we
the
understand
impression that we're going to be able to do the entire township, but it's at least the start of a program and a way to start biting away at the apple, taking bites in order to
Okay.
address these township
All right.
issues.
Mr. Chair, yeah, and we've seen as we've gone around just this past year, looking at the various drainage projects that we're going to do, as we go around, we constantly see these pipes that are 75% covered that need to be reditched, and we're just not going to get it done. This is a good, I think, a very good idea by Derek to put this in and do it, because we have to do something. We can jump up and down all we want and say it's somebody else's job, but that doesn't get it done. So we're just going to do what we can, and this is a good start.
We've also allocated some funds to work on some drainage work along Church Road. These funds would only be expended if we're able to achieve a partnership with the county to do some resurfacing on Church Road. So we're in the process, we're having those conversations with the county to see if that's a possibility, but there would be some drainage work that would be part of the resurfacing of that road that we need to be aware of, and an allocation has been made in the budget for that expense should it be incurred. That's where the $180,000 comes in. Below that, we have some drainage work over on Woodcrest that borders some open space properties. It's an issue that's existed for quite a few years, and it's something that we've been looking at over the past couple of weeks, reevaluating it, and there's a placeholder in the budget to provide an allocation to address some of those drainage issues. So that's the vast majority of the drainage maintenance line item here. Are those projects that I had just discussed. Last year we had budgeted $50,000 in our drainage grant program. If you recall, at a meeting a couple of months ago, we had allocated some additional funds for drainage grants. We went up to the $100,000 number, and that was based upon the level of interest and the level of applications we received. For next fiscal year, we've budgeted that number at $75,000, so it's the midway point between what we budgeted last year and what we modified it to, with the water levels being the way they are and the way we expect them to be. We don't foresee a fall off on those grant applications, so the $75,000 has been put in there as a placeholder to make that those funds available for any potential applicants. We have some general engineering costs, and then our standard administrative expense that's allocated to all the different budgets that goes to support our basically our rent in this building, the services the township provides. In saying that, we were relying pretty heavily on fund balance for the projects that are budgeted as expenditures. We currently sit at $800,000. Should we achieve all the expenditures that are listed in this budget, it will put a significant dent in the fund balance for the drainage account, with a large amount of those expenses coming from those two large drainage projects we have on Park Lane and also Swan Island, should those be approved and awarded. So that's the drainage account as proposed. Any questions about the drainage grant or the drainage account? Seeing none, I would like to move to roads. That'll be on page 8 of your budget report. For the benefit of the residents, once again, we receive about $250,000 in tax collections for our road maintenance and improvement account. We have about $85,000 currently in fund balance for that account. We're not proposing to draw on fund balance next fiscal year for any activities that are proposed in this budget. We're proposing the continuation of our annual dust control program. That number has been budgeted at what we had spent in previous years. John had mentioned to me getting a hold of the vendor to see whether or not they would be interested in holding their price from last year. I did so. I have not heard back from them. So at subsequent meetings, we'll be having that discussion. It'll be up to you whether you want to extend that contract with them or whether we want to go to bid on those services. Naturally, the bridge provides some complications. It did provide some complications last year with having to leave the larger tanker on the other side of the bridge and bringing the quantities over in smaller amounts. So we'll have a little bit of a challenge with that, but it's nothing new to us. We've had to deal with that for the past couple of years. We are proposing the continuation of the Wayne County priority snow removal program at the limits or the budget amounts that we have proposed in the past and have spent in the past. What they do is they adjust it based upon the previous year's expenditures. We haven't had a ton of snow this year, so we would expect that to drop off. But once again, you know, it's Michigan, and we still got 2 months worth of snow that we can get at least. So to adjust that down, I'd rather be more conservative than not relative to what that's going to cost us for next fiscal year. We have some allocations for our standard snow removal of the township facilities, and then also should we have a snowfall event that exceeds the 8-inch limit, or we have other significant weather events that might result in strong icy roads or something along those lines. There's an allocation in there for our emergency winter road program, in which we have an expense associated with doing an emergency push township-wide for the addressing of those emergency snow conditions. So there's an allocation for that. As far as the capital improvements we are proposing for next year, we are receiving $250,000 from the county for the local roads program. Our requirement underneath that program is a 20% match. That amount of $50,000 has been included in this budget. In addition to that, there's also engineering costs that are built into this allocation. If it's a local roads program, we usually have our engineers involved in it. There's a cost to that, so we have to account for that. The discussion at this point, at least coming out of my office, and you know, it warrants discussion with the DPS Commission, is if our priority has been and continues to be, and it is that of the DPS Commission, to work on Church Road, the general idea is to take those local roads dollars and place them on that road to try to leverage those to encourage the county to participate in doing a resurfacing there. So that's the initial idea here. Obviously, we're going to have a lot more conversation about it. We're going to have to see whether or not the county is going to participate, but that's the general idea at this point, is to spend those dollars on Church and participate in that local roads program, so the funds have been allocated as such for that program. In addition to that, we also have an allocation for a snowplow, and that snowplow would be tied to a vehicle purchase that's spread across a couple of different budgets, and we'll go over that as we move forward in the presentation. So that's what the $6,000 placeholder is for. Roadside maintenance. It's been a priority of the township over the past quite a few years to do roadside mowing. It's a safety issue. It's an aesthetics issue. It's not something that the county has done to the level of satisfaction I don't think that the township expects. So there's allocations in the budget to continue that program. There are also allocations in the budget in order to purchase via a lease. So it would be a 5-year lease with the last year would be $1 purchase, a piece of equipment that would allow us to do more of the roadside mowing that we can't currently do because it requires a specialized piece of equipment. I think the county, everybody's seen the county come into town, and when they do, it's pretty infrequent. I think they came in for maybe a half a week last year. When they come in, they come with a mower that's basically a brush hog on an arm, on a boom, and they drive along the road with a tractor and mow the roadsides with that. The proposal in this budget is to purchase not a piece of equipment to that extent, but a piece of equipment that kind of serves a similar purpose. We have received pricing to buy a mini excavator that would have a flail mower that would fit onto the end of the boom of the mini excavator. That flail mower would be used to cut those roadsides that are more overgrown, the fragmite in the ditches. Because right now, when we have a complaint, we'll submit it to the county, doesn't get done. Our next step and our only step, the option we have available to us right now is to send one of our guys out with a weed whip. Weed whipping a ditch with 9-foot tall fragmite is not a real efficient way to do that. So the proposal in this budget is to purchase a piece of equipment to allow us to do that in an efficient manner. So that has been incorporated in the budget for next fiscal year. That would be a 5-year commitment to that cost. So we would want to make sure that we're comfortable with that commitment before we move forward, but that's the proposal. We also currently have 2 backhoes. The idea would be to liquidate or surplus out the older of the 2 to help offset, a part of that cost of that additional piece of equipment. The current backhoe serves a purpose in that it's a certain level of redundancy for us. It also provides, some additional abilities that, if we want to load stone in one location and our backhoe is at another location, we have that ability. At least on the ditching and digging end of things, that mini excavator can take on that responsibility that other backhoe provided as far as redundancy was concerned, should that piece of equipment go down. So we have some ability there to get rid of an older piece of equipment, bring another piece of equipment on that can at least do some of the work that the old unit could. So that's the general idea behind that type of a piece of equipment we're buying. It's more than just roadside cutting. It's also got some other purposes as well. So
I just want to comment that, really for the audience, if anybody's watching, is that the 0.4 of a mil we levy for roads that Derek has just talked about, all the items in it, the dust control, the supplemental snow and ice control to pay the county and to do some of it ourselves, and the roadside mowing. I think the county was here once last year, 1 week.
Not even a full week.
So we got 1 mowing. I mean, that's tragic. If we relied on just the county to do our roadside maintenance, this place would look terrible. And so with the DPW people, when they have time at the water department, sewer department, they run mowers, and we're going to continue that. I only bring this up, and then we supplement when the county gives us any money for roads. We've been fortunate to get money for local roads. I mean, if you have kids in high school, you know that Gray's Drive is worked on every year. Sections of Park Lane are for neighborhood roads, and we're expected to get another $250,000 this year. We have to match it, but all of our money that we raise, this $250,000, is for maintenance. No improvements, just maintenance, beyond what the county will do. And that's up for renewal this fall. And the 10 years have expired. We have I think anybody want to ask, we have a great track record of all the things we've done with it. It all goes into helping to maintain our neighborhood streets and our roadside mowing, emergency snow and ice control. So it's very important to us to have that 0.4 of a mil, less than half a mil, reapproved, reauthorized. So I just wanted to mention that. Okay. Next, water. Are there any questions on the roads? Any questions on the roads? Okay. Next, water system.
The township did receive a cost increase for our water commodity from GLWA. The net increase with them was about 3.5%. I understand it's been the policy of the township to pass along whatever increases in cost from GLWA we receive to the residents.
GLWA is the Great Lakes Water Authority.
Correct. Used to be Detroit Water and Sewer. So the proposal in this budget is to move from $11.18 to $11.57 per unit, and a unit is 1,000 gallons. So that has been anticipated in the budget. I've always 11.57, 11.18 to 11.57. There's two components, obviously to the revenue derived in our water account. There's how much water is sold and what that rate is. So you won't see a representative increase in the revenue derived from the increase in rates, just simply because we're anticipating a lower quantity of sales. So that's why you see us moving from about $3 million down to just below that in this fiscal year, or this upcoming fiscal year. The budget for water for revenues for next fiscal year is estimated at $3.3 million, which is actually about $20,000 less than what we had budgeted last year. So we actually saw a decrease in revenue in the water account. Moving on to expenditures, obviously with any service that we're providing, there are personnel expenditures associated with that, and those are listed primarily on page 10. So these are costs associated with running the department for personnel, overtime, and majority of the pay and benefits are contractually mandated through our collective bargaining agreements. When we start diving into some of the more discretionary accounts, we don't have a ton of difference from last fiscal year, with the exception of a couple of different components. One is going to be the purchase of or at least a portion of the purchase of a new F-350 vehicle that will go to replace a existing 2007 pickup truck that we have. I had alluded to a plow when we discussed the roads budget. That plow was the one that will go on this pickup truck that has been recommended for purchase underneath the water account. Obviously, the plow cannot be paid for in the water account, so that's why it's over in the roads end of things. One of the downsides of government work, obviously, is a lot of paperwork. We maintain a lot of records, a lot of information in our various departments that we run all out of this building. And as a result, we have a need for some storage space, so there's been an allocation in here to add some storage space for the department. I don't know if residents are aware or not, but we maintain records for every home in the entire township. Anybody can come down, pull their permanent record for their home and review any permits or information, water tap records, anything like that. So we have a file on every home in the entire township. Those files take up room, and right now we're bursting at the seams. So there's an allocation in a variety of different budgets in order to provide some additional space for us to make sure we have room for that for those files. If we look on page 11, the cost for GLWA has anticipated that increase, but once again, you won't see a 3.5% differential between last year's and this year's, just simply because the quantity once again is going down. We're selling less, we're also buying less, so that's why you don't see an equal difference there. We do have kind of a mess, and the guy's been doing a really good job chipping away at it actually recently, back behind our DPW garage as far as spoils are concerned, and that's mainly because of the issues that we've experienced with the bridge trying to get material off the island. So we're trying to do a little bit better of a job of cleaning that up, and there's some costs associated with cleaning that up. We've made an allocation in next fiscal year to cover those expenditures, and that's been built into the budget. A couple of meetings ago, we had discussed the lead service line mandate, the lead and copper rule that's going to require over a period of time the township and any government entity that runs a utility, a water utility, to inventory and then physically replace any lead service lines all the way up into a private property. There is an allocation that's being made in the budget. We have a $20,000 line item here for lead service line replacement. We would like to, if the budget is approved in this format, have those funds available so that if the township comes across a lead service line through the course of our business, whether we have a hot read maybe on a sample, or we're doing a water main break and come across a lead service line, or it comes to our attention that a home is in need of a replacement for whatever the reason, maybe it's a sale or something along those lines, where there's a transition between ownership and the home is vacant and it's an appropriate time to do that, we would like to move forward with doing those replacements. So there's an allocation in the budget for that. I think this will probably be something that you'll see on an annual basis, knowing that that ultimately is our responsibility to take care of all those in the township. There is a schedule that we can work within based upon the legislation, but I think being proactive and starting to move forward as those situations arise, dealing with it sooner than later is not a bad practice. So there's an allocation for that in the next fiscal year. And we had also talked about the F-350 purchase, and that is budgeted at $25,000. There are a couple of placeholders within the equipment purchase portion of this budget for a new loader, and then also a new dump truck. I know Les, you had mentioned before the need for that. So I think that will come in probably subsequent years. In talking with John and looking at the needs of the department, I think that the priority is the pickup truck at this point, and then I think we'll probably try to reevaluate the dump truck for next fiscal year and move forward with hopefully a purchase on that. But it's obviously something that we're going to need to do in the upcoming future. That's why it's been kind of pointed out within the budget here that that's something we're going to have to look at here in the near future. In saying that, we have pretty much the last expense here on the page other than our bond interest and principal payments. We do have some aging out of some of our computer network that's required to be replaced because of lack of support on some of the older software. So the township as a whole has basically a schedule for the replacement of the various computers that are going to be timed out. So this is the allocation, an increase in the allocation in this line item for next year to account for those expenditures. So it's a kind of a minor expense, but one worth pointing out so that you know that we're following along the lines of taking care of these things that come up. So final line item on the water account: $3.3 million in expenditures, $3.3 million in revenue.
Any questions on water? Everybody comfortable? Just a couple highlights in case, as he went through it, everybody missed it. Highlights, at least in my opinion. A couple things are going on in the budget. In the last several years, we've replaced a lot of water main. And what's showing up right now is that we're budgeting for fewer overtime hours and fewer expenditures for major repairs of water main. And knock on wood, I don't even want to say this, but our winter's been very mild, but the amount of water mains we've had is substantially lower than what we've experienced in the past. Partly because of the weather, partly because we've taken care of some of the worst water mains. And we have about a $4 million program this summer planned for major water main replacements, the worst first. So that's all important that we're doing that. The other thing that strikes me is that we have a slightly lower consumption last summer than in the past. Now, I know last spring, y'all remember how wet it was in last June, and we didn't really have hot, dry, long spells. And I know that myself and some other neighbors, we didn't even use our sprinklers. And what's materialized is our total consumption as a community is lower than it has been. And it's probably because our summer was wet, pretty wet, at least half of it last year. So it's allowed us to do a few of these things. And last year, we did not increase water rates, so.
The chairman also pointed out, alluded to the $4 million water main project. So that, the expenditures for that are not included in the budget beyond the bond cost. So as we incur those expenses associated with that project, that'll come out of bond proceeds, and that's not shown in this budget, how that's coming in and going out. So just so you're aware, you won't see that filtering or being allocated for in this budget beyond the principal and payment. So.
And it was a $6 million bond issue that was sold. About 4 of it's for water main replacement, and the rest is for the sewage system. But through the good work of our treasurer and his staff, I think the net interest cost for a 20-year revenue bond was 2.26%.
128.
2.28, which is almost like pretty cheap money. So good job there, Ted. Thank you. Any questions on water? Sewer.
The total anticipated revenue for the sewer account is $2.875 million. And that's based upon a rate of $4.16 dollars per 1,000 gallons. It also also includes our service charges, so our readiness to serve charges that are part of your water bill. So that's what both our sewer and our wastewater treatment plant have to operate with for next year as far as revenue. We are not planning or we're not proposing a rate adjustment on sewer for next fiscal year. My understanding was we had a rate adjustment last year. So going on lines with last year, we had we didn't have a water rate increase. Now we do. Next fiscal year, we're anticipating. We had a big sewer increase, or we had a sewer increase last year. We won't this year. So it's kind of a flip-flop of those two. We also anticipate an expenditure of about $978,000 out of fund balance for our sanitary sewer system, and we'll go into what that accounts for, what makes up that as far as capital projects in the subsequent pages. If you move to page 14, once again we have personnel costs associated with running the account. I'd like you to focus down on account number 932.000. These costs are associated with our asset management, the mandated asset management program. $150,000 for our cleaning and televising of our system. There's additional engineering work that's part of that asset management program for the piping network for the system as a whole, not including the wastewater treatment plant. That expense, based upon the engineer's schedule for next fiscal year, is $67,500. And then also we have computers that we have to purchase for our GIS program or GIS system. I believe the DPW staff will be doing some training, it looks like probably in May and then also in August. We have to have those computers in place before they come back for training so they can jump right on them and not forget anything that they learned during that training, so they can put it in practice right away. And that money associated with those computers has been allocated in this budget as well, totaling $232,500 for basically that asset management program for next fiscal year. As we do the asset management program, we do come across from time to time sewer issues that need to be resolved. There's an allocation for that in the budget as well, $145,000 in account number 970. So that's been allocated for sewer repairs that are the result of information we get from the asset management plan or repairs in general that we are needed. 975000. Once again, you see the F-350 popping up in that budget. So between the various accounts that will be paid for through water, sewer, and then roads, and then office storage as well, a small amount at $5,000. We have principal and payments associated with a variety of different bonds. Those schedules have been incorporated into the budget, and the costs associated with those are listed in those two various accounts. So this is our proposed budget for the sanitary sewer system, less the wastewater treatment plant, budgeted at just over $1 million. What we do with the balance between that and the revenue is we transfer it into the wastewater treatment plant. You'll see that transfer coming through on page 15 of the budget. If we go to page 16, This budget, Fund 599, or 5900, Department 527, is our wastewater treatment plant. If you all recall, we extended our contract with Suez earlier this year. Those revised expenditures have been budgeted for next fiscal year and the contracted amounts. We have quite a significant bump in our sludge hauling and disposal costs. Last year, our actual budget or actual expenditure for this activity was closer to the $250,000 number. So that's been modified for next fiscal year to reflect what the reality of those expenditures are. We are currently out to bid for sludge hauling. This activity has traditionally been the responsibility of Suez to bind those services. For this fiscal year, the township will be getting involved in trying to solicit additional vendors for those services in order to try to make sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck. So that's out for bid right now. Push comes to shove, the previous vendor we've used, Waste Management, we still have a proposal from them, and we can always go back to that if we don't have responsive bidders for that work. So the worst case scenario is we go back to them. The worst case scenario we don't want to realize, which is we don't have a vendor in place to haul sludge, and then we're really in trouble. So we have to be very careful with this, but I think we owe it to the residents to make sure that we're doing our best to get the best price we can to remove the sludge, knowing that we have concerns and issues and challenges with the bridges being down or the bridges having reduced weight limits that kind of limit the scope of work that we can do over there relative to this activity. So just know that we're looking into that. The budget reflects what the cost has been in previous years. For the wastewater treatment plant engineering asset management program, based upon, once again, the engineer schedule, we have $125,000 in expense associated with that. We had discussed previously when we were talking with Suez, a maintenance audit. That's been allocated at $15,000 in this upcoming budget, and then general engineering at $15,000 for a total in engineering expense of $155,000. Electricity, natural gas, maintenance, permits, those all pretty much remain the same as in previous years, as actual expenditures for the fiscal year were pretty close to that. We do have a variety of different capital projects that are proposed for the next fiscal year, and this is really a combination of work that was scheduled for the current fiscal year that was not completed and is getting kicked to next fiscal year, as well as work that's proposed in our capital improvement plan that the operators had presented to us quite a few months ago. So we're working off of Ryan's schedule as far as what work needs to be completed over there, and also with Ohio's review on the activities that need to happen over there, and the costs associated with them have been allocated within this budget. We do have our payments, our interest, and also our principal on the Dupron screens, and the bottom line on this budget for our wastewater treatment plant is $1.8 million. So there is a draw on fund balance for the wastewater, primarily the capital improvements at the wastewater treatment plant, and it's to the tune of just over, I believe, $900,000, closer to $1 million. We have about $3 million in fund balance right now, and the reason why we have that $3 million is to fund that capital work. So it's achieving that expenditure is working within the parameters of the purpose of the dollars that we have in the bank. So that is the wastewater treatment and the sewer budget as a whole.
Okay, so I have a question.
Yes.
Page 16. Just to discuss it. The amount of capital expenditures at the wastewater plant are considerably higher than normal, double of what we normally spend. So you've got $680,000, and I know the answer. I mean, I think the first item, the intermediate lift pump replacement, which is $280,000, that was scheduled for this year.
Correct.
Wasn't done. We
Right.
didn't get it finished. And part of the reason we didn't get it finished, every pump we want to replace at the plant, every major improvement has to be processed through the state of Michigan through what used to be the MDEQ. It's now called Eagle, the new environmental department. And they're called Act 41 permits. 41 is part of federal legislation that they got to make sure that the pumps, that the flow through the plant all works, all the pumps, and they held us up. So we couldn't get it done, so it's rebudgeted here. So
Correct.
that's 300 of that amount of money, and I just wanted to mention that.
Yep, and so that was budgeted last year, those dollars, because they weren't spent, got carried over to the
Rebudgeting.
bank account, so they get
Rebudgeting, right.
yes, they get rebudgeted, so that's.
Okay,
That's correct, as well as the raw sewage one at 20,000. So you have about half of that, a little less than half of that, 300,000. That is a carryover from a previous fiscal year going into this fiscal year.
I just thought it was worth noting. So are you done with sewer now?
Unless you have any other questions, yes.
Are there any other questions on sewer? Anybody have a question? I know we're going through this.
Yeah, just stop me. I'm kind of flying through it, so if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask.
Okay, now, refuse.
Refuse. Year over year, there's a little bit of a difference in comparisons as far as revenues and expenditures, so kind of bear with me on this. We've combined, on the revenue end of things, our solid waste charge, our recycling charge, and our yard waste charge into one revenue component. So the revenue we derive for those charges in total are budgeted at $712,000 for next fiscal year. In addition, we also have a new line item here, which is our trash and recycle containers. Before the vendor came on board, we were having the contractor field requests for your 95-gallon containers. The residents could work with them to purchase those, and they would incur a charge to have them delivered, I think of $15. Rather than have them go to the vendor, we're going to purchase those containers. We'll have them here at City Hall. The resident won't, or Township Hall, the resident won't have to incur the delivery charge because we're not being charged a delivery charge when Priority brings them on a regular trash day, and that saves the resident $15, and they have the convenience of being able to pick them up right here. So as far as a revenue and expense, it's a line in and a line out. They equal each other, so it's no real impact on the overall budget. But it's worth mentioning, if anything, for the benefit of the residents, if you want one of those containers, you can come down to Township Hall. You can buy them here. You don't have to go through Priority. It's just a service that we can provide to them that really doesn't cost us anything. It's just a money in, money out. So that's included in the revenue, but you'll see a balance on the expenditure side of things. Fund balance for the solid waste account sits at $161,228, of which this budget anticipates spending about $108,000 of that. So that's really the differential between our revenue and our expenditures. Those are the dollars we're taking from fund balance to balance the account. I think that all of you were part of the conversation when we were going through the bid process and fielding vendors and looking at the bid results. And I think everybody hopefully understood and remembers how the refuse account is a bit upside down. It has built a fund balance over the years. I think the desire of the township has been to spend down that fund balance because it's not an account that necessarily, like our sewer treatment plant, you want to build a fund balance because you have a capital expense you want to fund from it. So this would leave us sitting at about $50,000 for the next fiscal year, which then we would apply as a credit towards that cost, but we would end up having to have a net increase in the overall refuse charge. So know that that's on the horizon. It will be mitigated some by the credit we would receive from fund balance. We would need to talk to Ann about what she feels is appropriate as far as a balance in there, spend down to that point, and then adjust the rates appropriately. But for this fiscal year, we're not proposing an increase in rates at all. We're going to be tapping fund balance in order to make ends meet. If you refer to the next page, page 18, we do have some expenditures associated with personnel on the refuse end of things. The main expense here you'll see at $655,986 and account number 810. That's a combination of both our solid waste, yard waste, and recycling expense per the bid sheet. And really, when we get invoices from Priority, it's just one bill. They don't split it out, so we're just going to account for that expense in one account the way that the bills are coming in. Same on the revenue side of things. We did have a shorter shutdown of the toll bridge, of the free bridge earlier this year. That gave us some data that we were able to extrapolate out what the cost is going to be for the tolls when the main bridge, when the free bridge goes down. I think we had all discussed when we were going through the bid process, us taking care of those toll fees. That was what was built into the contract, so there's an allocation for those expenses in the budget here. Our dumping expense, that's our contract over at Riverview Land Preserve. It's where our trash goes. We pay them directly for the tonnage that we take there. We have seen less trash going there. The rates go up slightly from year to year based upon our long-term contract with them, but it's the rate against the quantity. We don't see a real significant change that warrants a modification in that allocation. So I think we're pretty solid with budgeting what we budgeted last year. That waste recycle container, I talked about that earlier, 4,000 in, 4,000 out. And then for fiscal year 2020-21, we're budgeting $1,500. The intent is to provide a document shredding event for our residents two times a year in which they can bring their sensitive documents here to Township Hall, put them in a truck. They get shredded right there on the site. And that's a private service, a professional service that does that. So it's an outsourced activity, one that will obviously solicit pricing on and provide that service to the residents. I know that Rotary has done that in the past. If they're going to continue to do that, maybe there's an opportunity to partner with them. If they want to go alone on that, then obviously that's something that we won't do if the service is already provided for our residents. But it's a small addition to this year's budget that wasn't in there for last fiscal year. Just a couple of side notes. We did take the opportunity in this budget to merge a couple of the various accounts. Previous years, we had split out some expense across multiple accounts. It kind of became an auditing and a management nightmare when you had a $1,500 line item that was split, 5 different ways from 5 different accounts. So what we try to do is allocate those expenditures to 1 or 2 rather than 5 different accounts. So you saw some consolidation and some condensing of some of our expenditure accounts to limit those kind of divisions. So when you take a look at last year's versus this year's, you might see some differences. Some of it can be attributed to that, but I don't think any of them were that significant. We'd already reviewed the refuse deficit and how we were going to handle that in this proposed budget. And then also we had talked about the disposal of the surplus backhoe previous in the meeting, and that was a footnote that I wanted to mention to you. So in saying that, I know it's a lot to take in. Hopefully it made sense and it was beneficial to you, but the reason this is being presented to you is for your input. That's why we're talking about it this evening, and obviously open to suggestions on things that you would like to see modified. I'm all ears. You let me know if you'd like to see something different.
So basically, except for the things you've highlighted the last hour to us, everything else is pretty much the same.
Yes.
I know that myself, I've sat down and went through the budget with you and Jim Budny.
I've done it twice. So
I know the Township Board Committee
it
is
sounds
reviewing
better every
this.
time.
So we're open for questions, and I know it's hard because it's a several-page document, and you all had a chance to have it for a few days. If there are any, I hope, as quickly as we went through this, you highlighted all the major differences. I guess the next question would be, are there any questions or ideas, input?
Bill, I just have a couple of comments.
Yep.
Now, we talk about $1 million here, $1 million there, and $1 million here. And pretty soon it sounds like we're talking about a lot of money. And we are. It's a huge budget. It's a huge responsibility for this commission and the board to make some decisions on. Fortunately, we have some great leadership in the department. The reason we can do a lot of this without increasing beyond manageability the rates on sewer and water is we have a catastrophic fund that was really part of the original sewage treatment turnover from Wayne County and the Youngblood group. Mr. Reilly had some activity in that, and they at that time requested or required us to put aside $75,000 a year for maintenance, catastrophic maintenance. That eventually grew to $105,000 a month or a year. And when that requirement was done, when we met our agreements with the sewage treatment in Wayne County, the township, this commission decided to keep that going. Consequently, we have a fund balance of about $3 million that was for that. And we can thank this commission that we're not knocking on your doors wanting you to pay some more money, because that money is being utilized to bring this, and it is a catastrophic upgrade. I mean, we have to do this, or if we let it go, it just goes away, and then we have some real problems. So I want to commend the commission for their foresight and activities through that. And I just have one other thing I want to add. The clerk, the township clerk, deputy clerk, is streaming this now on Facebook live. It's great quality, and you can get it any place you want to get it. And I've been following it tonight, and we've had 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people coming in and out. And I want to thank Brian Friel, because he's worked extremely hard to get all of our commission meetings and all of our board meetings streaming live on Facebook. And its quality is excellent. The quality is excellent.
Good,
So,
good.
thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ted. Those are good comments. Is Brian back there?
I think he still is.
Brian's back there. He's welcome to come in. We'd like to introduce him to the commission. Bill's going to go see if he's back there. Anyway,
Here he comes.
well, Brian, Ted just pointed out how you're streaming the commission meetings, and that's a good thing. We always invite people to come to our meetings, and we're glad to see a few people here tonight. So, Brian, you haven't been to our commission meetings in the past, I don't think.
I've been to one, which was a little bit longer than I'm used to for a commission meeting, but
Well, I want to thank you for doing that.
yeah, thank you, absolutely.
Great job, Brian.
Thank you.
I've been watching this.
Thank you
This has
very
been really high quality.
Good, excellent. I'm glad it's working out.
Good. So thanks for doing it.
No problem.
Okay, I don't know, we've digested a lot. If there are no other questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve the fiscal year budget for all the public service funds, which include, in our jurisdiction, water, sewer, and refuse, roads and drains. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
There's support.
Support.
It's been moved and supported that the budgets as presented this evening for water, sewer, refuse, drains, roads be approved as distributed, or as presented to us this evening. Any further discussion or questions? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion's approved, and the budget is approved for recommendation to the Township Board. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Derek. I think you did a great job, and one difference here that we've never had before, I love the summary up front, pointing to the major changes. That really helps guide us through it. So good job there. Thank you. Next item, again with our director, the water loss report.
We want to move to action item B.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, I'm getting ahead of us here tonight, so. Good thing you're there to correct me.
So please use the cover page that was passed along to you this evening. Once again, I think the one that was in your packet had a typo on it. But the purpose of this, I believe, is explained in there. And really, it's a policy that the department would like to adopt. It's different. We're recommending a different practice than has been the practice in the past as far as seasonal water shutoffs. And I'll just kind of explain the issue to you. We have and continue to have quite a large number of seasonal residents that request water shutoffs, and that isn't an issue. It's a good way for the resident to protect their property when they're out of town. I think it's a good practice to make sure that you don't have a burst pipe or something like that during being away from your home, especially during the winter time. Unfortunately, in the past, the practice has been to discontinue billing in total for those residents during that time period. And as we go through the budget, and all of you have been around long enough to know that many of our budgeted expenditures are based upon basically households units, and the costs are allocated by all the units, not just by those units less the seasonal units that aren't charged an allocation when they're gone. For example, when we budget for our solid waste program, it's based upon residential units. By not charging those residents that have a seasonal vacancy on their home, basically it throws the equation out of whack as far as those expenses. And what that really does is it places those expenses on the other residents rather than it being the proportionality that it was originally intended. Same goes for bills in the water and sewer account. Normally we charge a flat rate, which we in the industry, and I'm sure you've heard before, consider a ready-to-serve charge. So that's basically an allocation or a charge for the piping network and basically the services to the home. By eliminating the bills in their entirety for those residents that are requesting the seasonal usage, we don't recoup any of those revenue streams. They're basically eliminated for those properties, and I don't think that was necessarily the intent of those charges to eliminate them completely. It kind of flies in the face of what the intent of a ready-to-serve charge is. That ready-to-serve requirement does not cease when they leave for their seasonal vacancy. It still exists. So what's being proposed here this evening is a policy that basically adjusts away from eliminating the bills in its entirety. Obviously, the residents will not be charged for the services they're not using. They won't be charged for water. If they're not using water, they won't be charged water. It's just basically it doesn't shut off those charges that are fixed and that every resident is billed on a quarterly basis, even when they don't incur any expense associated with commodity usage. So hopefully you've had the opportunity to read through the policy as presented. Once again, there's a different copy before you tonight. Really, it's just the bottom of the paragraph here that the last paragraph that's been added on or was left off, and this copy has that listed there. I'd like to open up to discussion to see what your opinions are. One last item of note, if this were one or two properties and it was a pretty insignificant issue, it probably wouldn't be as much of a concern, but it was brought to my attention because year-over-year increases in this type of behavior, this type of activity have been increasing about 20% per year. I think right now we have about 100 properties that are requesting this type of relief as far as not being charged for any services during that time of shutoff. So we fully anticipate if this continues to be the practice that it'll grow as people realize, hey, it's a good way to not have a water bill or any kind of bill when my water is shut off when I'm out of town. So that's what we have tonight for discussion on this item. Hopefully I explained it well to you.
Yeah, if it's much like the water, what we get from GLEWA, the Great Lakes Water Association. a few years ago, all the charge was based on your water usage, what you bought from them. Then a few years ago, they said, wait a minute, we have fixed costs that have nothing to do with the actual water, and they broke it out and charge us a fixed rate besides the water usage rate, and that's what's being lost here. So, I mean, it's the same type of thing as we have fixed costs that regardless of whether you use water or not, we have to pay for, so.
And that's a good example. For example, for next fiscal year, and these are the rates that have been built into our budget, our charges with GLWA are $57,600 a month, just for the ready-to-serve charge. It's $11.70 per MCF, but the vast majority, or I would say closer to 65% of the charges through GLWA are fixed charges. If we didn't use any commodity at all, if we use no water, you still have those expenses. You know, to say we're not going to have a similar type arrangement, really what it does is it places, because the township needs to have that revenue to balance the budget. It pushes those expenses on those individuals that have a quarterly bill. It really just pushes that onto your neighbor, and I don't think that was the intent of the program originally with the seasonal shutoff.
So under this policy, the residents aren't paying water and sewer for consumption, but they pay on the basis of the fixed portion of the
Correct,
charge.
and on average, that's about $106 per quarter, versus
Versus
the
$500.
the average consumer, their average household, your water bill is right around $450 a quarter. So there is still a fair amount of commodity charge that, if they're obviously not using it, they get that break, but there is still that fixed charge.
Right,
that.
right. Well, you have the policy in front of you. The floor is open for questions. Les, John?
Well, to me, it seems like it's not going to be advantageous for these people to shut their water off at all. Because they're still going to get charged if they're here or if they're not here. The only thing the difference is they're going to be paying another $50 to have the water shut off. And the bill's going to keep coming. I don't think that's right.
Yeah, well,
Greatly reduced, Les.
yeah, in his example, if it's 300 and the resident would expect to pay 100 because there goes the usage, but I agree with what you're saying, Les. It just doesn't feel right.
Well, I think that
And I fully agree with it. Me, as my neighbor goes out of town all winter long. So I know that those charges fall on us. And so I do see both sides.
Well, the advantage of turning your water off is you hear of all these mishaps where
Right.
people
Well,
have
yeah,
a
I
leak
think that-
when they're
that's-
gone for 3 months. That's a real problem.
Right.
that to me has always been the idea behind shutting your water off is the peace of mind that you're not going to have a drastic problem or a major problem in your home with a busted pipe.
Right.
It shouldn't be about avoiding charges. It should be about protecting the property, and that's always been my impression of why you would shut your water off. To avoid the charges when everybody else has to pay the charges, that's what we're trying to resolve here.
And based on how we do it, when we start off, that charge is based on everybody, and then all of a sudden, the other people are picking up your charge.
The overhead for the system is across 100% of the homes.
Correct.
4 months out of the year, we're at 98% or 97% of the homes. Then that burden gets spread across to the others. So I fully agree financially why we should do this. I don't know.
And if there's a suggestion for a different policy, or you want us to go
Right.
back and take a look at this, if that's the concern, I'm fine with that. At least you understand what the challenge is here.
Right.
You know, if you say, hey, you know what, maybe it's a reduced amount for season, I don't know.
Yeah,
but
I don't know. I don't know the right answer either.
This is what's being proposed tonight.
Well, this is nothing new in the municipal world. I mean,
Right.
communities have what's called readiness to serve charges in many communities built into their water and sewer rate ordinances. So this is
Right.
not anything unusual. But one thing that was in the worksheet that wasn't clear to me, and I gave you mine back, was the almost handwritten copy in a different type, larger bold type, of what the charge would be while they had it shut off. Now, not everybody goes away for a quarter, an even quarter. Some people just go away for a month. But when I used to do that, I shut my water off.
Right.
And I never called for it to be shut off at the curb. I shut it off in my
At the meter.
meter.
At the meter.
So your quarterly charge, your base bill with no consumption is anywhere between $106 and $110 per quarter.
Right.
And I don't know if we want to pass that around, but the reason it varies is
You're going to
because-
redo that sheet.
Yeah, we will.
We have that.
You have this? Okay. And depending upon, the reason it varies is because it's depending upon the meter size.
Right.
So if you have a larger meter, your
Yes.
charge is going to be more.
So, all right, so this is time for the table to ask questions. I see Mr. Heil raised his hand, but we'll give you a minute after the board talks here. Do you have any more comments?
I like the idea simply because, whether you're here or not, you're using, that's part of what you're using, just like everything else
Yeah.
that's provided. You're not using water, so you're not actually using water, so you're not actually getting charged for it. But these things are there regardless of whether you use water. So I think it's
Yeah,
only fair that you pay for it.
Yeah, you're paying for the overhead regardless of use.
Right.
Yeah, well, our refuse
Part of the
costs,
system.
our refuse costs continue, I mean,
Yep.
whether you're there or not.
Right.
Yeah, they do. And then you might say the argument, if they're not there, they're not generating refuse. But then you start getting into the rabbit hole.
We still gotta pay the
this
bill.
resident, the next door neighbor has
Yeah.
10 kids,
Well,
and they generate that
And
much more trash.
you may be here and not generate anything, because of it.
but the
But you're
truck still
paying
drives
for
by.
the service. The service is
Right.
there. You want that service.
Right.
Okay, Bill, you raised your hand. Would you please come up and identify yourself, and we'll accept your input here. I know you always have some input, so.
This is just pertinent to this one item that we're talking.
Identify your name and street.
Bill Heil, I live on East River Road. What this particular issue is discussing is basically two categories. The providing of a system that provides a product and the cost for the consumption of that. Then the question becomes equity. You're not going to find a point of view that makes you comfortable 100% no matter which one you choose. I'm talking rhetorically now, just to illustrate a point. If you have this fixed cost, and Bill, you consume 10 units a month, and Lenny, you consume 25 units a month, Lenny's using more infrastructure than you are, so is it right to give a fixed cost to everybody? You see, the other side of it is that if you decide that it's a percentage of whatever the water bill is, and it is thought of something, but is it right to shut the whole thing down? No, there's still a fixed cost every month that has to be absorbed. I don't know if a computer can do this, but if the fixed cost is X per month, and Lenny has 25 units and you have 10 units, the computer takes that as a proportion of the whole and lays it on you. They could use that against your annual consumption and maybe prorate the fixed cost that way if the computer can do it. If the computer can't do it, it doesn't pay to have everybody on the payroll working their calculators, you see. But somewhere in there is where you're going to have to find comfort in coming up with a decision, is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience wish to comment? Okay.
I'd like to say, we never used to charge to even go out and turn the water off or turn it back on. And when they started doing the charge for us, the guys to go out there, to $50 to turn it off, and it was $50 to turn it back on. So that was covering what you're talking about, at least at that time when we figured that out.
And I think the way this is written, it's $50 for the turn off and the turn on. So it could either be for the turn off or it could be turned on, but it's just $50 regardless. And really, the intent of that is to cover the time.
Well, now, if you're going to be charging these service charges while the person's gone, say for 2 months, 3 months, then you shouldn't be charging them to turn it off and turn it back on.
But you're
because they're paying for it.
still turning, there's two components here. The turn off and turn on are one, that's the $50. The 106 is the fixed
Yeah, and I think
cost
that
of the,
the cost
system.
the cost that we're charging, the $50, is to cover our staff's time to go out and facilitate that request. You requested us to come out and do it. We didn't. That was your request. We have to make sure that our time is taken care of as far as the costs associated with your request. So that's the logic behind those ends. I don't think that we were looking at, and it hasn't been my understanding. Maybe it was back then that if it was $100, it helped to cover the cost of the readiness to serve. But I think in this situation, it's two different components.
Yeah, well, those service charges, like on your meter and stuff, that was paying for the operation and maintenance of the system. So when a person would go out there, that's why we never charge them, because they're paying a service charge.
And the service charge is in whole for all the entities, for the sewer, the water, and the meter service charges to pay for that infrastructure.
Right.
So one question I have, the policy that you've enumerated in this document that looks like a memo dated 2/7/2020,
Yes, correct.
that will be the stated policy that you're recommending.
Correct. That'll be passed to staff, to billing. That'll be their direction on how to charge a seasonal turnoff.
Do you, and then this sheet that I don't have that I gave back to you, that I wrote on it, Costick's confused on. I thought it needed some more verbiage, if it's something you hand to the public.
Yeah, we would rework that. Yep.
yeah, we talked.
So
talked
would everybody
about
be more comfortable to think about this? You want to act tonight? The two options are we can act tonight on this, or think about it, and if we're going to think about it, I would say bring back that sheet worked up so we can see what you're going to hand to the public, so they understand what the charges are going to be.
You want it back?
Not like that, no. Do you understand? Did you hear what I just
I
said?
did, yes. Yep.
So in other words, what are we going to give to the people?
Right.
Would you be more comfortable seeing that to make a decision on this? Or we can either act tonight or delay it. Those are the choices.
Well, let's talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think pushing it's gonna change anything, so you might as well get through it.
Look, if the protection inside the dwelling is really the ultimate concern, then shutting off, like Bill did, inside the dwelling and draining your pipes pretty well takes care of that. Pretty well does. And then that means if you recommended that to everybody, then you don't have this turn on, turn off situation, and you don't have the billing adjustment situation, which from a cost accounting standpoint might cost more in labor than you think you're picking up. And there's no way in heck we'll ever have a time study that can figure that out, because it's very, very difficult to do that. So it seems to me keeping it simplistic is a really good idea. And what Mr. Howe was pointing out, I think he was saying quid pro quo, but I'm not sure that you can use that term anymore based on my television viewing. So I want to throw that out the window, so we're not going to talk about that. But the adjustments may cost as much as the fix, and if the overall gross dollars are determined and they don't seem to be that great, then maybe it's not a good idea to redesign anything. That's why the wheels got 360 degrees. And I don't think there's a perfect answer.
Well, I think you might have hit on it. Let me explain. And I know other people that have done this. When I just shut my water off at the meter, I think I've safeguarded the house. But I still continue to pay my bill.
Sure you do, yes.
And the only thing that I knew I was looking forward to is not having to pay for consumption, because I wasn't consuming any volume.
Right.
But I wasn't gone 3 months then. I was only gone a month at a time. Now it's a little longer that I'm retired. But a lot of people fall in that same category, right? So what I hear John saying, maybe first suggestion is that's the first option, is just turn your water off. And we continue to bill as normal. You're just not having any consumption. But our fixed costs are still covered.
And I think staff does offer that up. I think sometimes residents would prefer it shut off at the road.
And if they would, then this would be the policy.
Oh, then yeah, then that's a policy.
And that's pretty simple then.
Pretty simple.
I don't have any consumption, I don't pay for consumption, I'm paying the minimum.
And it's election. They have the right to make the determination,
'Cause our-
not some grouping.
Because our water bills are set up so that we have 2 water charges, 2 sewer charges, correct? And then 1
Yes.
refuse. One is for consumption, 1 water and 1 sewer is for consumption, the other's fixed.
Right, under number 5, under that proposed policy, has the base bill, that $106 that we charge. It's a water system service charge, a sewer system service charge, a refuse charge, recycle, and yard waste charge. And that yard waste charge is allocated, that full expense is allocated across 12 months, not just during the yard waste season, so.
So as an option then, what John has suggested here, I think I hear you, is first thing we ought to do is suggest to people just turn your water off one option is turn your water off at the meter. Secondly, if you want to have us come out and do it, here's the policy.
Bill,
That
people with pits can't do that.
people what?
People with meter pits can't do that. Some people can't shut their water off.
Well, they should have a valve inside their house where the pipe comes up, unless it's in a crawl space.
Yeah, okay. I see some more problem with it. All right, whatever. Whatever you guys think is right we'll just go with it.
Well, I don't know if you've resolved that issue or not that you guys just talked about, but everybody's got a meter.
Yeah.
Shut off at the meters.
Right,
That's true. It's either in their front yard or in their, well, everybody has a stop box, but a meter pit has a valve inside that pit also.
Right.
So, we can entertain a motion to proceed tonight and adopt the policy with the caveat that people be first advised. One option is to turn the water off at the meter. Otherwise, here's our policy. Or we could ask for time to consider this and bring some more information back.
or turn it off in the house. And-
Well, that's what I do.
Yeah.
But
That's what
that's,
he said.
yeah,
My meters in the house.
Yeah.
Most,
So-
95%
Well,
are,
sure they are.
98% are going to be like that.
yeah, there's no advantage to have the township come out and shut it off if you can do it right there.
Yeah.
The bills are the same. You pay $50 for the service at the curb.
Right.
So,
Well, there's another thing you got to look at also. Sometimes the incoming valves are not operating. You're supposed to have 2 valves on either side of the meter. Okay, they'll go down there and turn the valve off on the outgoing side of the meter. Okay, along comes a big ice storm and we lose power. Power's off for quite a while, no heat.
Right.
So then what happens is the meter freezes.
Right.
And then when the electricity comes back on and the water is not shut off on the incoming side of the meter, guess what?
Well, we're not gonna
But-
we're not gonna reach perfection on whatever we do. There's always going to be a risk, but I think that, the people have a choice here. If they're worried about that, then they should have it turned off at the curb.
Right.
But for the overall, I think this policy works. And yeah, I like the idea of offering it to them, and it sounds like you guys do offer it to them. I don't think that it has to be more than just mentioned to you to do that. I myself think we're good to go.
you want to make a motion?
I would make a motion that the
Policy as recommended be approved.
policy for seasonal water usage be approved.
Is there anybody support that?
I'll support.
Okay, been moved and supported. We've been discussing it. I'll offer the opportunity. Any last words on it? If not, we'll call for a vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Opposed.
I almost hurried past that. Okay, so we had 1 opposed. All right, so the policies have been approved. Thank you. Good discussion. Oh, next, on the agenda, the Township Board has asked every year, and they've asked at this time, that we elect officers So it's time to elect the chairman, vice chairman, and secretary. Obviously, I'm the chairman. Phil Kennedy is has been the vice chair, and our secretary has been
Les.
Les.
Yes.
So
So I'll
as
move
chair,
the
I'll,
reappointments.
I'll,
Reappointments.
I was going to open it up for nominations.
What was your,
I just skipped that.
what was your nomination?
Yeah. Who
As
you,
stated, all right?
I
Phil's
did,
the chairman, Phil Kennedy, and then Les is the secretary.
I support.
Right.
Okay, are there other nominations?
Well, Phil's not here. What else can we give him?
We need to make a longer list. Let's just keep it that
Are
way.
there any other nominations? If not, call for a vote.
Or a second
All in
on
favor indicate,
No,
yeah,
yep. I supported it.
that? Okay, who was the original motion?
I was.
John Reilly. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, well, I guess, thank you very much. Managers report, Derek.
Water loss report. We have gotten bills, or we have sent bills out, and I have sold quantities of gallons for both January and February, but I have not got my GLWA bills back in, or yet for January, and obviously not February because we haven't concluded that month. But year to date, we're 12.789%. And actually, it's more than year to date. It's actually going all the way back to February of 2018. 12.789%. And then there's also, as was requested in the past, the quantity of treated gallons at the plant, those numbers there as well. And the difference between that and the water gallonage is listed there. So just so you are aware of that situation. So.
Les, you have any comment on that?
no, at 12%, I think it's pretty darn good.
Yep, and we still need to do an estimate on our water main breaks and stuff, but obviously that's, we've been pretty fortunate. John can speak to it. We haven't had a lot so far this year. Knock
Yeah,
on
let's
wood.
talk about that for a minute. It's interesting. We had a mild winter. What's it look like? Up through now. We don't know about tonight or tomorrow morning, but what about?
Two water main breaks so far this winter.
Two?
Two.
That's terrific.
Last January, we
And a
had,
lot was due to, as Bill alluded to earlier, is you've replaced a lot of those older pipes that were breaking all the time, and it's made a huge difference.
It seems to me last year was like 25 or more.
Yes.
yeah, I think you're right.
Big difference, percentage-wise,
Just in January.
10%.
Right.
You're 10% of what
Yeah, you're
it
10%
was.
of what it was.
Like I told you Friday, that one I had Thursday night.
Yes.
I think part of it too is the temperature's been a bit more steady at
Right.
between
Well, sure.
34 and
Well,
38.
There is no frost in the ground.
Right.
Right.
And
If you got an inch of frost in the ground, we're lucky.
plus, you don't, usually when you don't have as much snow cover, you have more problems, but you haven't had those fluctuations which have caused issues, so. Yeah, we're supposed to get a cold snap on Thursday or Friday, so.
Thursday night.
Okay, moving on, local roads projects.
So there's a couple of different things here that I want to just go over in one lump sum, and that's really the local roads projects for church, water main design, drainage update. There was a memo that was included in your packet that had an update from our engineers on all these items. Ryan is in training right now, so he wasn't able to make the meeting. He's actually out of state. But I wanted to kind of go over some of these projects so that you, as the commission, have an update as to kind of where we stand. As far as the Park Lane drainage project, and I'll just read, I guess, this into the record for the benefit of the residents and also for you. The engineers are working with the pump supplier on sizing and layout of the pump and the design. They're awaiting water levels to recede for topo work to be done. Swan Island drainage. They're working with the pump supplier on structure size and control panel specs and power supply demands. So that's where that stands. We had authorized, if you recall, engineering and bidding of these. So that's obviously work associated with the engineering of these projects. So they're in process. I know as recently as today, there were a couple articles in the news regarding water levels for this upcoming spring and summer. Anticipating once again higher water levels than last year. I do want the residents to know in those areas that these projects are going to take some time to engineer, permit, and also bid. And then again, too, also we have to see how the bids come in. So if you're looking for relief in the spring, you should be realistic that these projects will more likely than not be installed by the time that we have high water this year. So it's going to be an ongoing issue where these are probably not going to be there to help out in the next couple of months here. So water main projects on Meridian Road north of Bridge and south of the thoroughfare, and Church between West River Road and Meridian. The projects are designed and specifications completed. Plans are submitted to Eagle and Wayne County permit departments for permit processing. They're supposed to be doing spoil borings near the thoroughfare canal, and I think that's going to happen tomorrow.
If they stay on schedule, yes.
Yeah, tomorrow or Thursday. We're ready to go to bid on this project. They just would prefer to have these soil boring results in hand before we go to bid, so they don't have to go back and revisit with the bidders the results of those boring events. So that's kind of where we're at. But I know that the chairman and I had talked about the schedule. I think we're on schedule with what the priority is, and that's to likely go to bid by the end of this month. So I think we should be in good shape there. Wastewater treatment plant, raw sewage pump 1. So that's one we had talked about in the budget. That was a carryover from this current fiscal year into next fiscal year. Hydraulic analysis per Eagle requirements is completed, including discharge piping size revisions. Review of Part 41 permit application is completed by Eagle and is awaiting the district supervisor's processing. Pump number 4, so that's another project. Once again, that was part of this fiscal year. They're being analyzed for sizing and options. May consider upgrading the screw pumps as well as a more feasible option in lieu of constructing a deep well pit, a wet well structure to house previously considered submersible pumps. Part 41 permit will be applied for once the analysis is completed. As far as the HVAC system over at the wastewater treatment plant that services the lab area and also some of the shop space, we were hoping to try to get away with not having to apply for a Part 41 permit for that work. Eagle felt that there was significant enough of a change in the overall design of that system that a Part 41 permit was going to be required. So Ohio's been working with a mechanical consultant on resizing the unit and preparing specs to submit to Eagle for that Part 41 permit. The bar screens, the contractor has been on site for probably the past couple of weeks, and I brought some pictures for this evening. That way you can kind of see some of the stuff that's been going on. They have been doing some prep work for the installation, and if we've got a quick minute here, I'll kind of go through that. Ryan sent these along. And they're each coated with different titles that kind of show the work that is being done in preparation of the installation. So a couple of different things, if you recall from the scope of the work, needed to happen before we could put those in. We had to cut some floor. We had to cut some wall to put the chute in. We had to do some reinforcements. We had to relocate some piping, so that's been ongoing. You'll see in this picture here, which is probably kind of hard to identify, but the wet well alarm floats are relocated. This is a coring that they had to do, a cut through the wall that goes into the garage for the discharge chute, so that's complete. There were some patches that had to be done for the compactor installation for the floor, so that's been done. You'll see this beam here was installed as reinforcement for the compactor because of the weight requirements. They did some ventilation removal and some relocation and are employing some temporary ventilation in order to suffice during that the time of construction. So that's what this picture showcases. Some piping relocation that had to happen to make room for the Dupron screens. You'll see here the ferric chloride line was rerouted. The sludge line was also rerouted, so that's what you see here. This is our wet well. This is the sluice gate, and that's been relocated to facilitate the screen installations, which happened down in here. And then also temporary ventilation, the one that I had shown you on the previous picture where it's being utilized, is also shown in this picture. And this is actually a good picture so that the DPS Commission and also the residents can kind of see the method that we're using right now, or staff, our contracted staff is using right now. These buckets, those are full of rags. So these are rags that have been pulled out of the wet well by the staff. They put them in a 5-gallon bucket. They lift it up through the shaft, and then they dispose of this material out in the dumpster or in the appropriate location.
I thought you said rats.
No, rags. I'm sorry, rags. Yes, rags.
Yeah, more importantly, they're flushable rags.
Yeah, flushable rags. So this is the current method to eliminate this contaminant. That, in a nutshell, is the reason that we're doing the Dupron screen, is to get this material out in a more, in a safer, more efficient method than filling up 5-gallon buckets and hauling them up on a rope through the wet well. So I thought that was a good photo for Ryan to provide. So the prep work is being done in order to be ready for the installation, and so Ohio has provided the update regarding the screens themselves, in that they're currently being manufactured by Dupron, and there was a slight delay, but I don't think that it's going to cause any issues according to Ohio as far as the installation is concerned. They've done everything they could in the meantime in order to make sure that as soon as they get there, they can move forward with the install. So.
And since the photo's still up there, I just want to add, for the sake of any public watching, we've all had the chance, this commissioners, all of us, some of us 2 or 3 times, we've gone down in that 40-foot deep wet well and seen the problems personally when we worked on talking about budgeting for this project. So, at any rate.
Staying on the topic of the plant, we do have the consent order that we're still working under, and part of the program, or part of the capital improvements we're planning for over there to comply with that consent order is potentially installing a new clarifier. In order to have the necessary space to install a clarifier, we're going to have to expand some of the area to what would be the east. We have, since this was published, have clarified the ownership of the properties that we need to expand to. They are township owned. I think there's some deeds that have to be cleaned up a little bit because they're originally owned by the county and then transferred to us, so we just need to file them. Quite a long time ago when they were originally transferred, so we'll take care of that. That way we have the footprint necessary to do that work. So that's worth noting. And the asset management plan preparation of the sanitary sewer system wastewater treatment plant is in progress. You saw some of those projects budgeted for in the next fiscal year. And then we did have an emergency repair of a sinkhole over at the wastewater treatment plant. That has been completed. We have some concrete that has to be replaced as a result of that, because we had to cut some of the access road, some of the circular drive out in order to facilitate the repair. But that was it was a decently sized project, and I can bring pictures next time. But really, what it amounted to was we had a couple of chemical lines that were going into a structure that were feeding one of the clarifiers. Some of those rotted out, created a sinkhole, and we had to excavate all the way down to the bottom, probably about 18, 19 feet, in order to get that taken care of, replace, build the structure, and then put a solid cap on the top.
Is that near a clarifier?
Right next to a clarifier. Yep. So so that was resolved, and that was kind of a concern, but was taken care of pretty quickly. Got a lot going on, as the report indicates, and hopefully things keep progressing well, and we stay on schedule with all the different projects we're working on. So,
Hey, I thank you for the report, but you didn't cover the local roads.
local roads. So we talked a little bit about that on the budget process. We've had conversations, numerous conversations, and many of us have had conversations with the county. It includes the treasurer, Bill, John, Jim, regarding Church Road. I know it's been a long conversation with the county and over many years. Long story short, we were going for a reconstruction of Church Road with the county. In the end, I think we can conclude that that's not going to happen And a lot of it has to do with the mandates that the county is requiring as far as the design standards. We just don't feel that we have the necessary space to reconstruct the road within the parameters that they're requesting as far as shoulder width and whatnot. It would have a very severe impact to the properties along Church Road. So I think the strategy at this point is to try to leverage, as I alluded to in the budget, our 2020, 2021 local roads initiative allocation, because we've been informed by the county that they would give preference to projects that brought funds to the table, even if it's county funds that are passed down through a local roads initiative. They would look at those projects in a more favorable light than those projects that didn't have a participating funding source. So the proposal has kind of been to the county. We can provide those funds. We can provide our share potentially if it's approved by the township. And we want to see if you can participate in what would amount to be the resurfacing of that road. So when we talk about the local roads project for 2020, that's, I think, what the focus is. Now, it's up to you, it's up to the township to make that decision, but that's kind of the way the discussion has been, knowing that Church Road has been kind of a long-standing issue, which the township has made a priority to try to address. So we'll see how the conversations progress. We've got the individual that we believe can help us at the county. It's just trying to get a hold of that individual. We've identified the name. It's just getting back with us about getting it on the list is the next step. So we hope to continue to pester them to try to get that answer in the near future here. There might come a point in time when, if the county doesn't wish to participate in that expense, whether the township feels that it would like to take that allocation that we have, as well as our share, and incur the engineering cost to do what we can with the money that we have available. So that will be a conversation that we're going to need to have if it gets to the point where the county isn't willing to participate in whatever cost or revenue they have to be able to support that project. So just to give you a heads up and an update, that's kind of where we stand. And we'd like to try to get this thing answered sooner than later, and it's not for lack of trying at this point. So,
Okay, I want to speak to this issue. I've had too much time to think about it. Derek's too nice. For one, first, the county engineers don't call him back. They don't call our engineers back. We met last fall on Church Road. They said they're going to give us $250,000. Last year they gave us more than that, and we spent it all on local roads. We spent $50,000-$60,000 by the high school. We spent it repairing Manchester and many other local roads all over the township. We're grateful for the money. It's a local road program. So this year they said they're going to get us $250,000. Now, there's a difference between local and primary roads, right? You all know that. Meridian's a primary road. Bellevue's a primary road. Really, in my mind, Church Road's a primary road. Church Road has a school, the elementary school off of it, and has in terms of traffic counts, has a higher traffic count than Bellevue, for example, or a Manchester, for example. But nevertheless, where I'm at, our plan, we drew up a plan that was defeated twice. In 2015, we went to the voters. We asked for 2 mills, 2.2 mills was defeated. We're going to talk about this a little. I'm getting ahead of myself here because I prepared a memo on roads. I want to have some fun for a few minutes tonight. But Church Road really makes me mad. And here's the deal. We said we'd like to widen it 2 feet between the canal and East River Road. You're all familiar with that? From the canal to East River Road. Now the other section, we know if you try to widen it, you got all these big trees. We don't want to cut those big trees down. And the idea was we'll widen it off the north side, and I've been through this with our engineers, 2 feet. In some places you can hardly, if a guy's in a pickup truck and you're trying to pass him, it's pretty tight. Even Bellevue's wider than Church Road. And so the county engineer said, oh, okay, we could widen it 2 feet, but you got to have 6-foot shoulders. Well, there are no shoulders there now. There's none. And he's stuck with that. you've got to have 6-foot shoulders. I said, well, we're willing to put some money in to do some ditch enclosures on the north side. We get rid of an ugly ditch if we could widen it 2 feet off that side. But you got to have 6-foot shoulders.
On each side.
That is-
Both
on
sides,
each
both
side,
sides.
if we widen it at all. And I think we ought to stick to our guns. I mean, I could be like some other popular politicians and swear. It makes me so frustrated that they
It
won't
just
even,
makes it impossible.
they
That's
won't
what
even
happens.
consider a reasonable
You
plan.
don't have the room.
And I since I met with you this afternoon, and I've been stewing about this, particularly that they don't return phone calls. At some point, Derek, I mean, you got to maintain a relationship. You and John do. You're the staff, but I don't. And at some point, I'd like to invite them to come in one of our meetings and speak to why you got to have 6-foot shoulders. I mean, it just makes me angry. But I've said it. You can digest that. I'd like to go on with the agenda. But it's frustrating, right?
Yeah, I don't think they have 6-foot shoulders in a lot of places on those hills.
John, that's
There's
right.
none.
There's none, many places.
That's just ridiculous. He's following a national standard, which for 3,500 vehicles a day doesn't apply. It would be a lot safer to widen it 2 feet.
Well, even like Van Horn Road, they paved Van Horn Road going out like the Middle Belt. There's no 6-foot shoulders on that road.
Tell me about it, Les.
Les, if we put the 6-foot shoulders, literally, in that shoulder, you know, a guy could be sitting on his porch and shake hands, you know, with a car or somebody going by. That's, I mean, it was
Anyway, that's my 2
ridiculous.
cents.
Well, 6-foot shoulders is going to take that road and turn it into a 4-lane road.
All right, I got a more fun project that I've got here in my hand. It's the last item in your packet. So, is there any other items that anybody wishes to discuss? Moving on here.
No, nothing at this time. Go ahead, Bill.
All right, so then the chairman's report. I'd like you all to find in your packet the memo I wrote. It says, it's time to talk about township roads. Bill, perk up here. I'll give you a copy of this sometime. I wrote a memo that says, time to talk about township roads. And I start out by saying, how would you, I did this to really kind of address a discussion, start a discussion. And I kind of wrote this thinking it would be something that we could hand out to the public. So, how would you rate the condition of our township roads today? Good, fair, poor, or failed? Now I'm talking about the major roads, the primary roads. How about using another description? A mess. Yes, township primary roads are a mess. Here are a few facts to consider. So what I want to do tonight, and I hope the commission approves of this, is next 15 minutes, all the facts that I've listed on these pages, I'd like to start with the other end of the table, and each one of us take a turn reading a fact, and then we can comment on it. And as chairman, I'm going to say, let's do that. You got it, John? All right, Jim, you start. Fact number 1.
Fact number 1. All our primary roads and local neighborhood streets are owned by Wayne County. Townships in Michigan do not own roads and bridges, and townships receive no money for roads and bridges unless through locally voter-approved millages.
Fact number 2. Speaking of bridges, consider this. The bridge over canal on Park Lane closed with no plan in sight to repair it. The underpass on West River Road beneath Groseal Parkway closed with maybe a repair plan in 2021. The bridge on East River Road to Mesa Island unsafe, down to a 5-mile-per-hour speed limit and under contract to repair in 2020. The bridge over canal on Ferry Road will soon be in need of major repairs. The Groseal Parkway major bridge to the island due for major repairs in 2020 and 2021. Specific details still not known at this time, but Wayne County expected to pay between $5 million and $10 million for repairs.
Fact number 3. An assessment of most significant primary roads would indicate that 3 miles of meridian are in terrible condition and at least another mile failing. 3 miles of East River Road are in terrible condition, with 2 additional miles failing quickly. 1 mile each of Church Road, Ferry Road, Bellevue, and West River Road are in terrible condition.
Fact number 4, with the county expected to spend millions of dollars on the county free bridge in the next 2 years, this leaves into question that any money will be available for repair or resurfacing of our primary roads. John? Fact number 5.
Fact number 5, Wayne County annually publishes a list of priority primary roads projects. Each year, the county is able to undertake 15 to 20% of these projects.
20 projects.
15 to 20 projects. This is basically a 5 or 6 year priority list. Grosse Ile has no road project that shows up on the 2020, not even Meridian Road, as bad as it is. On a separate list bridge, repairs for Grosse Ile are listed. That's it. That's fact 6.
So that's a little worthy of discussion. So what this says is the county has the top 100 projects throughout, from Grosse Pointe to Livonia to Northville and Brownstown and here, Wyandotte. Their list of 100 projects. They do 15 to 20 a year. We have no road project listed on that. And 5 years ago, a couple miles of Meridian was listed, but it's off the list. Les, fact number 6.
Fact number 6, Wayne County road improvements are prioritized based on most serious to address high traffic volumes and high accident locations and congestions. Therefore, as we have said before, Grosse Ile to get a road project approved must compete with projects like Jefferson in Riverview or in the Grosse Pointes, 7 Mile in Livonia, Middle Belt in Westland, Ford Road in Canton, Eureka Road in Romulus, and Telegraph Road in Brownstown, and some roads on Grosse Ile don't even have the proper names on them.
Mine says the same thing, Les.
Ted, number 7.
Fact number 7.
Fact number 7. In the past 5 years, twice the DPS Commission has recommended property tax millage for primary road improvement be placed in front of the voters. In 2015, a 2.2 mil levy was requested for 20 years. It lost 1,361 to 1,075. In 2018, a 2 mil levy was requested for 12 years, which lost 391 noes to 3,043 yeses.
Fact number 8, Jim.
Fact number 8. With a township tax roll value of $623 million, a 1 mil tax levy will generate $623,000.
Fact number 9. To undertake a road improvement project and plane off the top layer of asphalt and make needed road base repairs and resurface a mile or 2 lane road roughly costs $700,000.
I guess you might as well continue to read until we get to fact 10.
Question for DPS Commission. Since the community usually relies on the Commission to develop and recommend capital improvement projects and proposals for water, sewer drains, and roads, we should consider another road proposal given that November 2020 is a presidential election opportunity. Given our past success, it would be easy to take our past 2 defeats as a reason to ignore putting forth any new proposal. But is that fair to island property owners, given that our primary road system continues to decline with no hope of fixing things? If a new proposal is developed, surely the Commission would avoid anything close to a 2 mil request. But would one of the following be acceptable? A half mil for 5 years? A mil for 5 years? 6/10 of a mil for 4 years?
Fact number 10. At 1 mil, the township would be able to improve 1 mile per year. If spent on Meridian Road, it would take over 3 years to resurface the worst sections of this most traveled road on the island.
Fact number 11. In 2020, either the August primary or the November election, the 0.4 of a mil that we talked about at budget levied for street maintenance approved by voters 10 years ago will be up for reauthorization. This raises about $240,000 each year. Of this amount, after maintenance for dust control, roadside mowing, additional snow and ice control, leaves about $125,000 for street resurface repairs. Question: if a new funding proposal appears on the 2020 ballot, might it jeopardize reauthorization of the 0.4 street maintenance millage? John, I want you to read this paragraph right here. Yet another option.
Yet another option would be to propose a single road proposal like Meridian Road using a hypothetical figure of $2.5 million to be paid off in 10 years might only take a half of a mil. Details need to be worked out. And I believe there's a basic problem here's a fact.
It's on a roll.
And yeah, I'm on a roll right now, and here's what it is.
You're missing the point.
We're
You're missing my point.
What is it?
Let's read the last sentence. But Meridian,
But Meridian cannot be repaired until the county bridge work is completed. What a mess this would be to have Meridian under construction while the county bridge is closed. So what do? Nothing. Request a half mil, wait for Wayne County to resurface our primary roads. Your input is being requested. And that today is our reading lesson.
Here's another fact. The reality of the situation with this questionable formula for which roads are most important automatically eliminates Grosse Ile from serious consideration for any large road project. And the reason is because we are an island. We're never going to get the cross traffic like West Road got before they had the massive repavement recently. We'll never get the cross traffic like Eureka Road will. We don't have to go outside of our downriver area to see. We're out of formula forever. And it's my belief that denies the residents on Grosse Ile equal protection and due process because the formula is void ab initio. It doesn't work.
good summary. So I wrote this to have fun. And I tried, and it probably needs a little tweaking because I wanted to have this as a handout at some point to the citizens. Because you kind of build up from, we got a mess on our hands, here are the facts about what we've done in the past, here's the facts what money would bring in. But we need to approve our maintenance millage. That's my point. I mean, here's what my feeling is after thinking about this. We need to get that maintenance millage approved, and if we put something else on the ballot, we might jeopardize it. So we're going to ask the voters for reauthorization. That's important to us. Or we are dead in the water. That's number one. Number two, we can't ask for a mill. If people don't want to, they didn't approve 2 mills. Number three, if we ask for a half mill, it generates $300,000 a year. And what is $300,000 a year? It would take us 7 years to repave Meridian. Probably 8 years or 10 years. And so I say do nothing. Don't put anything on it. Now, I say that seriously because that's probably where my head is at. As Ted has pointed out to us in the past, as the township treasurer, in 2025, 5 mills falls off of our debt township-wide. 5 mills. That means the residents are going to see a reduction of over 1/3 of what they're paying for property taxes as far as the township is concerned. That would probably be the time to go to the voters with a well-thought-out program and say, let's get some roads paved.
I think that's actually 2024, Bill.
Well, 2024, 2025. We don't want to jeopardize that. And if we were levy a half mil now and go to the voters for $300,000 a year, it doesn't get us anything. We can't even pave East River Road that's falling apart on your way to Mesa Island. We can't fix Bellevue Road. Park Lane, you can't even go down all the way on Park Lane because the bridge is out now. So, and I know this, and John knows this, for the last several years, that Ferry Road bridge over the canal, every year a hole develops on the east end of that bridge abutment. You can see it's as big as a basketball, and you can look down, and every year the county comes out and fills it with blacktop, and people still drive over it. Anyway, it's a mess. So what I'd like to do is have you think about this, and I'd like to bring this back at one of the next meetings and talk about it. And then you go through this again. I mean, I thought it was kind of fun. Isn't that fun?
Oh, yeah, we need,
I like the reading test.
let's have another reading test next month.
Well, I hope you all understand where I was going with this.
Yeah, I didn't mean to skip your numbers.
Out of
And Bill,
frustration.
I would say, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we do have to put some thought into this, but I would suggest that we do it, we bring it back to the next meeting and get right on it, because it's a very important thing. And of course, like everything else we want to do, that bridge ends up being a sticking point. But, let's talk about it next meeting.
Okay, so Bill, I guess John gave you a copy of what I want to say is, another thought I had was, well, let's just pave Meridian. Go to the voters with just Meridian. I thought that was a brilliant idea. Just ask them to resurface, because everybody drives Meridian, right? Or if they don't, I don't know where they go, but everybody drives Meridian, and it's in bad shape from Parkway north. And then I thought, but we can't do that when the bridge is closed. And just one other negative comment I'll share with you. This fall, Derek invited me to a meeting where and I think, Ted, you were there, and Jim was there, when the county was talking about what to do with the bridge, the free bridge. And I was invited because after the meeting, we were going to go look at Church Road. But during the meeting, a brand new engineer from the county was there. And a female, very intelligent, smart lady, probably a good engineer, she's been around a long time. She wasn't familiar with the island, though. And she said, well, I have good news for you guys. Next summer, this coming summer, we're going to repave Jefferson by that toll bridge. And we said, well, that's great news, because it's supposed to have been paved 2 years ago. Between Sibley Road and Pennsylvania, you know what a mess it is? And we said, but how can you pave that if we're going to close the county bridge?
Yeah.
She said, what do you mean? So we took her out there and showed her. I mean, that's no longer planned, right? But county government, I get so damn frustrated with them, it's going to kill me. Anyway, I wanted to have fun with this tonight, so thank you all for participating.
And after that, you still want to sign up. Congratulations, Bill.
All right, well, anyway, we'll put something back on the next agenda then. I have no other reports. We'll go around the commissioners. Jim, anything?
Nothing more. I just look forward to the next time I get to go through this.
Brenda?
No.
I'd like to thank the director for the budget. He did a great job this year. With the cover sheet and all the pluses and minuses, it really helped out, so thank you.
John?
I happened to notice, I thought it was Mike Rowe, Dirty Jobs, in the audience, but it is Matt O'Donnell. It's good to see him there. That's it. I have nothing further.
Thanks for coming, Matt. And Les?
The only thing I'd like to say is, it's a dirty shame that, our roads are in pretty rough shape. And when you're talking about, in front of the public safety building to Macomb Street, if the county would repair the potholes and the other stuff properly, and just driving down the road and throwing a shovel full of cold patch in it, the roads would be in halfway decent shape. But you don't see that in Ohio, people repairing roads like that. I don't know what their mentality is. They think they're fixing something. But I remember I took you for a ride one day, and we went up Meridian north of Horse Mill. And there was a line that went right down the edge of that road, and you couldn't figure out what that was. Well, that was the edge of the southbound lane, because there used to be a double highway up there. And instead of them fixing it properly, coal patch and all the little bumps, and you go to. That's all I have to report.
Derek, anything else? John?
Nothing.
If not, we'll call this meeting we'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I don't want to turn the citizen down. Come on. You want to make a quick comment, you said, before we adjourn? Come on up. I hope not. So
You'll be the only one here.
I don't want to shut you off. We're ready for the motion to adjourn. We haven't called a
Well,
vote.
thank you guys for your time, but there's a point here that I think needs to be observed. In a way, you stole some of whatever I might have called thunder or concern. It's, much of what you talked about in this document you presented me with at the end was on my heart and mind. But I want to speak to you conceptually about a little bit bigger issue. You have roads that you need to repair. And yes, we have $5 million coming in a few years.
No, we lose 5 mills.
5 mils, excuse me, whatever it is. But the
We have
three
an
or-
opportunity.
Yeah, we have an opportunity for more money that can be used for purpose. But there's a couple of things here that have to be coordinated, in my opinion. And I thought of this for a while, but this all came to my mind last night at the board meeting. The budget process was going on. I'm saying, what are we going to do about the roads? But the very concept that you're talking about needs an integration with the township as a whole, even with the commission as a whole. You want to replace a mile of Meridian, but let's say you've got some drainage problems under Meridian. You fix the road surface, but are you going to come back 2 years later and tear up a piece of the new pavement for a stretch for a new sewer pipe? There needs to be a coordination to get some kind of maximum effectiveness. There's the issue of bridges, and the formula you were talking about applies to bridges equally with roads. But I'm saying, I'm going beyond that too. You can take a look. We're going to get hung by our pension system. I'm not here to offend you, Ted.
It has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Yes, it does. And I'm not here to fight with you, Bill. The budget of this township only has so much money. And while we can try to get people to appropriate money here or there, we have reasons to spend lots of obligations for other things than just the roads. There's money you're going to be competing for with other issues, is what I'm pointing out. And within that spirit of all of that, I'm saying that you not only have to get your act together, and I respect the heck out of you, I'm not trying to criticize, but we have other units of this government that have to do the same, and then we have to figure out a way to make that whole thing work. And then we have to communicate with the public and say, look, we know a hell of a lot of you are senior citizens and don't want to pay more taxes, but you've all had a house that had a leaky roof, and you had to repair it even though you didn't want to, and you did that because you didn't want everything else busted up and you wanted to protect your property values. It's the same thing with your bridges, your roads, your sewers. You got to do the same thing. I'm not asking you to like it, but I'm asking you to accept it. And I'm suggesting that it would be prudent, because of all of these needs, to not sit here and piddle around with a 10-year loan. Make it longer. And I have a reason for that with vehemence. I could build a case that while you're paying interest on the road, it's deteriorating faster, and the cost of replacing it makes the interest that you're paying a cheaper buy. And if the road lasts for 30 years, why should you pay for it in 10 and leave other people for a free road for whatever, or a water pipe that lasts 100 years? Pass some of the cost on to others in the future. I'm making an impassioned plea that consideration take place here, but in the other commissions and with the board, so that they have a total view of what's going on. And now I'm done.
I think once you explained yourself, I think I agree with you that if there's an opportunity to see millage drop where we could coordinate all the aspirations of the various groups within the township and solve a lot of problems at one time through a coordinated plan,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
includes roads and other things, that's the point. I think it's a very good point. But I will say this, when we do roads, we've done the water mains before that and the drains. We're not about repaving a road and then not fixing the the utilities underneath first.
Okay,
Made a point of that, okay?
thank you. Thank you, Bill.
So that was worthwhile to hear your comments, and worthwhile to you as staff, I hope, and the elected officials here.
I've heard it before.
Okay, well, it's a good notion. Anyway,
Well, again.
so we have a motion on the floor to adjourn. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.